Hi, and welcome to your Finances database. This database will enable you to have more control over your finances in a way that will help you understand where your business is. It will help you with your pricing. It will help you with a lot of other things as well. So the first thing you can see up here is that we have a few tables. The first one is income, expenses, fixed expenses, profit and loss, and then we have a link. This sign here is a link. A lightning bolt is a link to a synced database, which is clients in your CRM, which we'll talk about later. It's optional. So the way that the income table is set up, the first column is a unique identifier column. So I've just numbered it, but you could have this as your client name. Instead of having that as a client name, I've linked it directly to the database. So when I enter a new row, basically it will let me select from a list of my clients, and I can say which client I want this to work with. So let's say this is client 1. This is currently not linked to an active client list, but you could do that as well. Talk about that a little bit later. So we link to the client, and then we say, okay, what is the date that they paid us? So let's just say that this is an invoice that they paid on the 26th of April, and the number of the invoice. Now you could put this in before they've paid as well. That's why I have a column here called status, which we'll talk about in 1 second. And the amount that they paid, let's say that that is 120. And here, let's just make this, just to add this, so this is an empty. And then if your country collects VAT, this is where you would put the VAT. Not every country requires it, so I just have this option. If you don't need it, just click over here and hide the field, and it's gone. The status, whether it's paid or unpaid, so by default it's empty, and then when it's paid, we basically put this in here and select paid. Now, what I do is I have all of my invoices, a copy of all of my invoices and my expenses on my Google Drive, and then I just link to it here. But if you're using a tool like QuickBooks, well, then you wouldn't actually need this database. But if you're using any other tool to create invoices and you just want to link to that invoice directly in that tool, not a problem. You can do that by just putting the URL into here. If you're using a tool that integrates, you could actually set this up with Zapier to integrate, but we're not going into that today. For those of you who do not only live in dollars, if you live in a country and you're collecting money in various currencies, I've created these 3 columns. Column number 1 is sum in currency X, where you can just change that to whatever your currency is. And then sometimes, oh, that's why that was empty. Ha 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 ha, this is going to error. Sorry about that. Let's just delete that. If you're collecting money in a different currency, that's where this is going to come in. It's going to pull the data from here. So I collected this 455, let's say it's pounds, and then the dollar rate, well, this is not realistic for pounds, but the dollar rate, let's say, is 280, and then it's converting to dollars so that I know how much I'm making at the end of the month in dollars. And the way that this is set up is there's a function here, and it's basically saying, if there's a number here in whatever currency, then calculate this divided by this and give me in dollars. If not, give me whatever the dollar rate is. So you can see here it's 550. Here it's 400. Whereas here it's 162 because it's using it here. This is another one. They paid us 220, whatever currency this is. This was the dollar rate, and this is how much it was in dollars. And so when you're updating this, you'll always get the total number value in dollars here. So this will always be used afterwards in other functionality that we have. Another 2 columns that are of interest here is this column, which is month number and name. And we're going to use that for grouping in a minute. And we're also going to use that in order to automatically calculate or push stuff into our profit and loss. And there's an automation that's running here in the background. I'm not going to go into how this automation is actually working right now because you don't have to set it up or anything. But in general, maybe I'll just show you the way that this is set up. Is when a new record is created and it has a month and number and the status is paid, then what will happen is it will automatically copy the record month and number into the profit and loss column, and that will actually give us the data in the profit and loss. So that's how this is set up. And the reason we need the number and the name, I'm just going to hide these because you don't actually have to see these. These are all automatically created. But the reason that we need these, well, is as follows. So if you go under income by month, what you're going to see is every month, this is just our number. We don't have our client name here or anything. But then we have, actually, we should probably show our client name. Let's fix that. So we have the number. This is the client that paid, the date that they paid, invoice number, the link to the receipt, which is currently empty because this is just test data, and then the amount that they paid in dollars and VAT collected if you need that. And this we don't actually need. Okay. And as you can see, these are grouped by month. So you know how much you're making by month and what your status is by month at any given time. Okay? The next thing that we have is our expense table. And the expense table is built very similar to how the income table is built, only we're not connecting it to a vendor name, and we have categories. Those are the two things that we actually added here. So let's just review this quickly. So there's no number here. Here we just write the name of the vendor. You could, in theory, create in your CRM a table with vendors and have that link just like we did with the clients. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. And then the next thing that we have is the date they paid us, the amount they paid us, link to the receipt, and then if you paid any VAT or not. Hidden are also fields for the different currencies like we talked about before. So if you're paying some in dollars, some in a different currency, you can actually calculate that and it will give you the total in dollars. And then we have category. So if you want to know how much you're spending on different categories in your business, as you're putting in your expenses, you can actually define a category for them. So how much you're spending on administration, how much you're spending on software and tools, how much you're spending on creative like copywriters or designers or maybe social media, and then business development. And of course we have status paid. So there's also hidden fields here for the month and the number and the link to the P&L, just like I showed you before with the automation for income. And if we look at the view here, you can see that you have expenses by month. So again, how much you spent each month per vendor. Okay. The next tab that we have is not connected to anything, but it's really important. This is your fixed expenses tab. And I would highly recommend using this tab so that you know how much money you're spending, regardless of anything, when you start your day. So this is the different expense types that you might have: an accountant, your Zoom account, email service provider project management tool. You define here if it's a monthly or a yearly kind of expense. Type your renewal dates, what the monthly rate is, what the yearly date is, and then here basically I've done the calculation for you of cost by month. So if it's a monthly rate, it's dividing it by 12, and if not, then it's basically, sorry, if it's a monthly rate, it's giving you the monthly rate as a flat rate, and if it's not, if it's a yearly rate, it will divide it by 12. And the number that you're looking for here is this number here on the bottom right corner. So in our example here, that's $136.50. That's the cost of running our business per month. You need to know this cost, and you need to know this cost because when you calculate your rates for your services, you really, really want to make sure that you're covering your expenses. So if you have an internal rate of $100 an hour and you sell a service of, let's say it's 5 hours or it costs $500 for 5 hours worth of your work, I wouldn't recommend pricing it based on hours, but let's just for the sake of discussion here do that. So you think that you're making $500 on that service, but if you only sell that service to one client during the month, you haven't actually made $500. You've made somewhere along the lines of $364, give or take. Why? Because we have to take out the 136 cost of expenses. So when you're calculating your price, you need to calculate what your expenses are. And there's a whole formula about how to do this, but basically just rough how to do that formula is take your income per project that you want to make, add to that the expenses that you have per month, and whatever profit that you want to do, and then divide that by the number of clients or service packages that you sell per month, and that is the cost of your service package. Very rough way of explaining it, but you get the idea. So this number is really, really important. The next tab that we have is the profit and loss tab. And this is all automated. You really don't have to do anything. This is just going to give you data that you can look at. So every row is automatically created when we add a month to our income or expenses. It will pull here, this is a link to the records that it's pulling from. And then here you have the total income that you made that month, right? So in January, we made $1,225, in February, $2,450, in March, $950, and in April, $697.57. And this is the total expenses that we had. And then the monthly profit is basically the income minus the expenses, right? Very simple. So you know that you've made so far in 2021, $31.94, right? You think you may have made $5,300, but you haven't really because that didn't take into consideration the expenses. So looking at your profit and loss will actually give you a better picture of what's going on in your business, and that is always useful. Another useful view that we have here is the monthly cost by categories. Let's say we want to know how much we're spending on different types of expenses. So our total expense for January was $342. Of that, $330 was admin costs and $12 was software costs. Now, obviously, this is an example and it's a really bad example, but this would actually, if this is realistic, this would raise a flag because I'm sure that there are more admin things that you could give over to software and your software costs are really low. So that would just be a great way to learn from this table how you could fix something. But then it also gives you how much total software costs, business development, creative, and this gives you an idea of what you're spending your money on, and it gives you a better idea of your cash flow. The last thing I want to talk about now is clients. So before I go into this tab, which is the clients tab, I'm going to switch over to the CRM. Now, CRM is customer relationship management. And what I have here is very, very basic, and you could improve on this a lot. But the purpose here was just to show you how to set up this interaction between your CRM and your finances. So what we have is a first name, last name column, and this basically just pulls those two together and puts it together as a unique identifier. We have status, and this is the status depends on whatever it is that you work, however you work in your pipeline. So you might have initial meeting and then send proposal, follow up, and then either won or lost, right? This is your information, the phone number, email. We have company name, I think, somewhere along here, or maybe I don't have that here. And then project type. And this is basically, this no longer exists, sorry. Project type. And that is the type of services that you have. So you want to know how many coaching clients you have, how many clients of 6-week program you have. And we're going to see how that can be used a little bit later down the road. So one view that we have here is pipeline view. And this is very useful if you want to know what's going on in your pipeline. So I have one client in the initial meeting stage. I have 3 clients that are won, right? So you know at any given time where people are in your pipeline. And the next view that I've set up for you here is active clients. Now, this is great. Once a client, there's an automation running in the background, but basically there's the company name. Once a client is marked as won, right, in the pipeline or in the all clients, they will automatically get a status of active. And if you move this, if I change the status from active to inactive, they will be removed from this view, and then you'll be able to find them either in the pipeline or in the all clients. Okay. But the idea here is that they automatically get this. You don't have to set this up. And you can see the automation is set 1 leads to active clients, right? That automation is already set up for you. And then project type, you can change that very easily by just going into project type, customize field, and then we have coaching 6-week program set up, but you could change that or add the options very easily, just typing in there. And what I've set up for you here is under active clients by type. Basically, these are filtered for just active clients, and it's grouped by the project type, right? So you know who's your coaching clients, you know who's doing 6-week program, you know who's doing setup, or whatever services you have. What I want to show you now, though, is here, this share view. When you click share view, you have the option to allow data in this view to be synced to other bases. Okay? And that's exactly what we've done here. Because then, let's go back to our finances now. If I click here, you'll see that this is, I can resync it now, edit whatever I want from here. So this is pulling in the initial status, the company, the phone number, email, project type. If I sync it again, this will disappear. But what I've added as well is I've linked this to the tax invoice number in the income. So basically this is a lookup field, and it's looking up the tax invoice number, any tax invoice number that's linked to this client. Remember when we linked before, it will push it here. And it's also giving us a roll-up, a sum of how much we've made for each client. So client number 1 has paid me $2,730. Client number 2, $2,292. And client number 3, $282.50. And this will keep updating, and this will give you the information that you need per client, how much each client is making you. And you can see if this is worthwhile for you or not, because you also have the project type, obviously. So this is your finance database and your CRM. You have a link to both of these. What you have to do is you have to copy them over. You don't have to copy the data, obviously. Copy them over to your own Airtable. You will have to resync them, create that synchronicity, which is why I showed you how to do it. And then you will be able to take better control of your finances and connect that also with your clients. And this will help you to understand your business better, and it will also help you understand, given any reports to the tax authorities in your country.